What is Microcampus?
From Shanghai American School, 14 students in the 8th grade goes on a 28-day journey from Shanghai to Xizhou. The inquiry project is one of the main focuses here on Microcampus. Before embarking on the trip, students choose a topic of high interest to study here in Xizhou. We interview the locals and experts to gather information on our topic and eventually assemble a final product. The topic that I chose was religious diversity. Before coming on Microcampus, we were required to do some research on our topic. My research stated that there are 5 religions in Xizhou: Taoism, Christianity, Buddhism, Benjuism, and Islam. After coming to Xizhou, I interviewed several people and discovered that this is the order of the amount of people that believe in each religion, from the most to least: Benjuism, Islam, Buddhism, Christianity, and Taoism. The reason Benjuism and Islam are the 2 dominant religions are because there are 2 minority groups residing in Xizhou: the Bai minority group and the Hui minority group. Benju is a religion indigenous to the Bai culture, and the Hui people are a Muslim minority group. But in order to fully investigate a survey of religions in Xizhou, one must consider the religions Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. Buddhism and Benjuism. Firstly, what is Benjuism? This religion is very specific to this area. Benju is the worship of local heroes along with the Buddhists of Buddhism. It was built on the foundation of Buddhism. This is a picture that I took outside the Benju temple in Xizhou. It's a traditional Chinese couplet. This particular couplet is written in traditional Chinese. It states, "Believe wholeheartedly in Buddha, thousands of people celebrate this festive season happily together." This was probably glued there during a Benju festival. There are 4 instances when people worship the Benju heroes. Firstly, each hero becomes worshipped due to a different reason. For instance, in Xizhou, there is a Benju temple dedicated to a scholar. If someone wishes to get accepted into a good school, they would pray to the Benju hero. Another instance Benju heroes are worshipped is during a Benju festival, which is on the day of the hero's birthday. Finally, some people go to the Benju temple when there is death or marriage in the family. Unless it is one of these 4 circumstances, the Benju heroes are not really worshipped regularly. Also, here in Xizhou, 3 religions are in a way mixed together: Buddhism, Benjuism, and Taoism. Benjuism incorporates different elements of each religion. There are almost no people that believe in Taoism alone in Xizhou. Most of these people live near Weibaoshan Mountain. The majority of the people who believe in this are usually the older or middle-aged women of the village. There are fewer men that believe in this because they are usually busier. However, there are still a lot of elder males in the village that believe in Benju and Buddhism. The majority of the people that grew up in Xizhou believe in this religion also. Some people in the previous generation started believing in Buddhism not until later on in their lives because it acts as a sort of relief, as they have lived a very hard life. However, the newer generations are becoming less and less religious. For instance, many people were taught that religion is a superstition in school. Also, many people choose not to believe in religion because they have learned in school about science. Their origins. There are 2 things that people must consider to truly understand the origins of Benjuism and Buddhism in Xizhou. Firstly, people must understand how these religions were brought to Xizhou. Secondly, people must understand the origination of Benjuism. This picture is a piece of scripture in Sanskrit preaching Buddhism. It was brought to Delhi when people of India were spreading the news of Buddhism to China. Buddhism was brought to Xizhou because of its near proximity and distance to Delhi Old Town. Although Delhi was not part of the Silk Road, it was part of the horse tea route, which allowed foreigners to bring different religions and preach in the area. Benjuism, however, was not brought to the region. As mentioned before, Benju is the worship of heroes that saved the village from suffering or improved the lifestyle of the villagers. In return, the villagers would worship them along with the Buddhas. There are both legends and actual historical events that the heroes come from. The first Xizhou Benju hero was an actual historical event. During a time which warlords were overrun in China, Mongolia was waging a war to conquer Yunnan. The war eventually reached all the way to Xizhou. The Mongolian general Hu Bilie saw the state of Xizhou and how the rogues and warlords were taxing the villagers unfairly. The villagers were suffering from hunger while the warlords robbed them of their crops, livestock, and money. Hu Bilie put a stop to this by chasing the warlords away. The villagers were extremely thankful to him. Hu Bilie was the first Benju hero to be worshipped in Xizhou, even though he was not a local. The Benju hero in Zhoushan village, however, came from a legend. Once upon a time in the village of Zhoucheng, there was a large magical snake that plagued the village. At night, he would turn into a man, kidnap the local women back to a stone cave, and force them to be his wives. The villagers lived in fear of this python night and day. One day, a man in the village decided that he had had enough. His name was Du Chaoxuan. He decided that he must slay this fearsome beast. Du Chaoxuan knew that he couldn't fight the python face to face, he would surely lose. Then, he formulated a plan. He roped and tied knives all around his body and set off for the python's cave. When he reached the cave, the python noticed him and opened his mouth to let out a hiss of contempt. Just as the python was about to attack, Du jumped into the python's mouth. The python was forced to swallow him. Then, as he slid down from the python's throat to the stomach, Du slit open the python and killed it. As soon as the villagers heard of this, they rejoiced. However, during the process, Du had died. After a funeral, the villagers worshipped him from then on. Christianity. Christianity in Xizhou is actually pretty rare, and it is mostly underground. Most of the Christians currently reside in Dali. However, there is a church near Xizhou. Christianity was brought to Xizhou after the reform and opening of China because of the students that went overseas to study and brought back this new religion. There were also foreigners that allowed in China after reform and opening, which allowed people to bring Christianity to Dali and eventually to Xizhou. Islam. As mentioned before, there are two minority groups in Xizhou, the Bai and the Hui. Everyone in the Hui minority group is Muslim. If someone outside of the Hui group marries a Hui person, they must also become Muslim. However, as I mentioned before, the newer generations are becoming less and less religious. If I were to ask the adults deep questions about the Quran, they would not be able to answer. The adults are usually Muslim only by habit and by following the tradition. They do not necessarily know everything about their religion. Also, they do not pray 5 times a day. Many of them are running businesses and shops. It would be inconvenient to leave their shop unattended while there might be potential customers and work to do. Usually, it is the older men who are able to answer questions about the Quran, their history, and who goes to all 5 prayers. The younger generations are even less religious. For instance, although they are considered Muslim, they still eat pork, however discreetly. The regulations are also slightly more lax compared to the other Muslim countries. For example, I was able to stand outside of the Islam mosque and take pictures of the inside. I was also not required to cover my head. Islam itself has been brought to China for approximately 1,300 years during the Tang Dynasty. However, there are 2 aspects one must know to truly understand the origins of Islam in Xizhou. Firstly, one must understand when and how the Hui minority group came to Xizhou. Secondly, one must understand Yunnan's geographical location relative to other Muslim countries. The Hui minority group came to Xizhou about 700 to 800 years ago during the Yuan dynasty. Previously mentioned, there was a Mongolian Benju hero named Hu Bilie. Not only does he play a significant role in the Bai minority culture, he also brought the Hui minority group to Xizhou. Hu Bilie himself was a Muslim, and his army was mainly composed of Muslims. After his army conquered Yunnan and settled to live, some of his army chose to live in Xizhou, hence establishing the Hui minority group. The others lived all around Yunnan and in some neighboring villages also. During the Qing dynasty, however, another war was conducted. This time, the Muslim refugees from all over Yunnan fled to Xizhou, then adding to the population of the Hui. Yunnan's geographical location is relatively close to Myanmar and India, and Islam is very prominent in those 2 areas. In Islam, people who preach, spread, and teach their religion to new areas and people are called ahongs. Ahongs came from both Myanmar and India to spread the word of their religion, and it eventually reached Xizhou. During the Qing dynasty, the government discriminated against the Hui ethnic minority groups. The Qing government oppressed the Hui in ways such as, but not limited to, making them eat pork. The Hui ethnic minorities started protesting against the Qing government. The leader of this movement was named Du Wenxiu. Soon, other ethnic minorities joined in on these protests. Some of the ethnic minorities include the Bai, the Miao, the Naxi, the Yi, etc. These protests officially were dubbed the Yunnan ethnic minority protests. These protests were approximately during the 1860s. As mentioned before, there are currently 2 major dominant religions, Benju and Islam. These 2 religions, as expected, would have very different traditions. This results in religion dictating different customs in Xizhou. For instance, the Hui people are prohibited from eating pork. This results in separate markets where people buy food, a Bai market and a Hui market. Another custom is areas of living. In Xizhou, there is a Muslim quarter, which is mainly dominated by the Hui people. Even though this is so, there are still courtyards shared by both Hui and Bai families. Despite these different traditions and customs, there had been no conflicts caused by religion. This may be because people believe both religions advocate peace. I would like to thank all my sources that were extremely helpful in terms of talking about their beliefs and answering all of my questions. So a big thank you to the 3 Mr. Yangs, the 2 Mr. Ma's, Miss Ma, Mr. He, Mr. Du, Mr. Zhang, Mr. Zhao, and Mr. Li. I would also like to express my gratitude towards the staff at Yangzhou, the guards, the kitchen staff, and the housekeepers. Also, I would like to thank the Linden family for hosting our microcampus group at Yangzhou and for letting us use the Linden Center facilities. Yeling and Evie, thank you for being my teacher support several times. Last but not least, I would like to recognize the chaperones, Mr. Taffel and Miss Mai, who put up with us for 28 days and guided us on our journey.